Benito Mussolini didn't just want to control Italy. He wanted to control its future, and to do that, he set his sights on the lives of Italian women. To Mussolini, women weren't individuals with their own ambitions. They were instruments of the state, molded to serve his vision of a stronger, larger Italy. His government reached into nearly every aspect of their lives, dictating their roles, their bodies, and even their futures. One of the most ambitious efforts was the Battle for Births, launched in 1927. Mussolini believed that for Italy to rise as a dominant power, it needed a surge in population, more workers, more soldiers, more citizens, loyal to his cause. His goal was staggering: to grow Italy's population from 40 million to 60 million by 1950. But this wasn't just a call for larger families. It was a campaign enforced through policies that pressured, restricted, and in many cases, outright forced women into motherhood, whether they wanted it or not. To make sure his plan worked, Mussolini put strict rules in place. The government actively promoted large families, and in 1933, it began offering financial incentives for women who had many children. If a woman had 6 or more kids, she could receive money from the state, along with special privileges. Large families were seen as ideal citizens, and were rewarded with tax breaks, discounts on food, and even priority in getting government jobs or housing. One of the most famous events tied to this policy was a massive ceremony Mussolini organized in 1933. Thousands of women who had given birth to multiple children were invited to Rome, where they were celebrated and given medals. These medals, called the Honor of Motherhood, were given out in bronze, silver, and gold, depending on how many children the woman had. Mothers of 10 or more children were treated as national heroes. But while mothers with many children were praised, women who didn't follow Mussolini's plan were punished. He saw such women as a threat to his vision. To discourage women from avoiding marriage and childbirth, he introduced a special tax on single people, known as the bachelor tax. It was introduced in 1927 and applied to mostly men, but it also affected women who were unmarried by a certain age. This tax forced many young people to marry earlier than they otherwise would have. This tax was deeply unpopular, especially among working-class men who could not afford to marry young. Many men had to delay marriage because they couldn't support a family. But Mussolini's government ignored these economic realities. The policy only added more financial pressure on men while limiting their personal freedom. To make sure his message reached every household, Mussolini used media to spread his ideas. Newspapers, radio programs, school textbooks, and even posters on the streets were filled with slogans encouraging women to have more babies. The government published articles claiming that women who had large families were happier and more fulfilled, while those who didn't have children were lonely and miserable. Doctors were encouraged to tell women that having many children was good for their health, even though in reality, Italy's high birth rate led to many pregnancy-related deaths. Hospitals were poorly equipped, and medical care was focused more on keeping women alive during childbirth rather than improving their overall health. Many women suffered complications, but there was little concern for their well-being. Mussolini actively prevented women from controlling their own bodies. Contraception was made illegal, and anyone caught selling or using birth control could be punished. Abortion was also completely banned, and doctors who performed it risked arrest and serious consequences. Women who sought out abortions often had to go through dangerous, illegal procedures that put their lives at risk. To ensure that women were getting pregnant as often as possible, the government sometimes took extreme measures. There were cases where doctors would examine young women to check if they were fit for childbirth. Women who were found to be healthy were sometimes pressured into marrying quickly so they could start having children. Mussolini didn't believe women should have careers. He believed that a woman's place was in the home, raising children and serving her husband. And he made sure that government policies reinforced this idea. One of the biggest steps Mussolini took to limit women's work was the 1933 law that restricted women's employment in government jobs. This law stated that no more than 10% of public administration jobs could be given to women. This was a direct attack on educated women who had trained to work in government offices, schools, and other public institutions. But Mussolini didn't stop there. In 1938, he expanded this restriction to private businesses, making it even harder for women to find jobs. Employers were encouraged to fire female employees and replace them with men. Companies that followed this rule were often rewarded by the government. Mussolini justified these policies by saying that men needed jobs more than women, especially as Italy's economy struggled. He argued that women should focus on being wives and mothers, not competing with men in the workforce. These laws hit middle-class and educated women the hardest. Many women who had trained as teachers, secretaries, or civil servants suddenly found themselves out of work. While Mussolini wanted middle-class women to stay home, he couldn't completely remove women from the workforce. Italy still needed female labor, especially in factories and farms. But even here, women were treated unfairly. They were often paid less than men for doing the same jobs, and their working conditions were much worse. For example, in Italy's textile and agricultural industries, women made up a large part of the workforce. But they had little job security. Employers could fire them at any time, and they had no legal protections. In many cases, women worked long hours in dangerous conditions only to be paid a fraction of what their male co-workers earned. The government also discouraged women from seeking higher-paying jobs. Women who worked in industries that were seen as masculine, such as engineering or manufacturing, were often pressured to quit. Job training programs focused only on men, and women had almost no opportunities to advance their careers. Mussolini didn't just change laws, he also changed how young girls were educated. The goal was to make sure that from an early age, girls understood that their main purpose in life was to become mothers and wives. Schools were redesigned to reflect Mussolini's ideology. Instead of learning subjects like science, mathematics, or business, girls were taught how to be good homemakers. Their lessons included cooking, sewing, childcare, and cleaning. Textbooks were rewritten to enforce these ideas. History books glorified large, traditional families, and literature emphasized the role of women as caregivers. Even in subjects like biology, lessons focused more on motherhood than on actual scientific knowledge. Outside of school, magazines and newspapers played a big role in shaping how women saw themselves. Women's magazines were filled with articles about how to be a good wife, or how to raise obedient children, and how to support their husbands. Women who worked were often portrayed as selfish or unhappy, while housewives were shown as fulfilled and joyful. The government even organized special programs to train young women for their future roles as wives and mothers. In 1937, Mussolini's government created the ONMI, an organization that ran programs for young girls and mothers. These programs taught girls how to cook, clean, and care for babies, preparing them for a life dedicated to family. Mussolini didn't want women to have political influence either. Women were completely excluded from government positions, and they were not allowed to vote. Although some fascist women's groups existed, they were controlled by the government and only promoted Mussolini's ideas about motherhood and family. Women who spoke out against these policies were often silenced or ignored. Even in social spaces, women were pushed into the background. Women's sports and clubs were discouraged, and public places were increasingly designed around men's activities. One of Mussolini's biggest moves to control family life came in 1930 when he made divorce completely illegal in Italy. Before this, divorce had already been difficult, but Mussolini ensured that once a couple was married, they could never legally separate, no matter the circumstances. For women in abusive marriages, this law was devastating. If a woman's husband was violent, unfaithful, or irresponsible, she had no legal way to escape. The only option was for couples to live separately, but even then, women had no financial or legal protection. If a husband abandoned his wife, she had no way to force him to provide support. Since women had limited job opportunities, many were left to live in extreme poverty if their marriages broke down. Mussolini's government defended this policy by claiming that divorce was a threat to social stability. He argued that strong families created strong citizens, and that allowing people to leave their marriages would lead to moral decay. This was also why the state made it difficult for women to work. Mussolini wanted them fully dependent on their husbands, so they would have no choice but to stay married and raise children. Mussolini's anti-divorce and pro-marriage policies aligned closely with the beliefs of the Catholic Church, which had long held influence over Italian society. In 1929, Mussolini strengthened this relationship by signing the Lateran Treaty with Pope Pius XI. The treaty recognized the Vatican City as an independent country, giving the Pope full control over it. It made Catholicism the official religion of Italy, giving the Church more power over Italian society. It also reinforced Catholic control over family life, including marriage and education. One of the biggest consequences of the Lateran Treaty was that Catholic marriage laws became the law of Italy. This meant that the Church had direct control over marriages, and since Catholicism strictly forbade divorce, Mussolini's ban on divorce became even stronger. The Church also helped Mussolini promote traditional gender roles. Priests preached about the importance of large families. Religious ceremonies were used to reward women who had many children, and priests often spoke out against women who wanted independence. The relationship between Mussolini and the Vatican wasn't always smooth, but on the issue of marriage and family, they worked together. For men, the rules were far less strict. While they were expected to marry, there were no real punishments for husbands who abandoned their families or had affairs. Many wealthy men kept mistresses, and some government officials, including Mussolini himself, were known for having multiple relationships outside of marriage. Women, on the other hand, faced severe consequences for any kind of romantic involvement outside their marriage. Even widows faced difficulties. If a woman's husband died, she often had very few rights over property or financial assets. Since women were discouraged from working, widows with children were left in incredibly difficult situations. Many relied on charity from the church or support from extended family, but the state offered little help. Mussolini didn't just change laws, he also controlled how women were seen in society. Even fashion was affected by Mussolini's propaganda. The regime discouraged women from wearing extravagant or revealing clothing. Makeup was seen as unpatriotic because it was associated with vanity and modern women who rejected traditional values. Women were encouraged to keep their faces natural and avoid bright lipstick or heavy eye makeup. Simple and modest clothing was promoted. Women were expected to dress in practical, conservative styles rather than following foreign fashion trends. Hairstyles were kept plain, short, modern cuts were frowned upon, while longer, more traditional styles were preferred. Despite Mussolini's harsh restrictions on women, many found ways to resist his policies. Some fought in small, quiet ways, refusing to follow the rules imposed on them, while others took more direct action, risking their lives to fight against fascism. One of the most common forms of resistance was secretly using birth control. Mussolini's battle for births tried to force women into having large families, but many women did not want to be treated as machines for producing children. Even though birth control was illegal, many women found ways to avoid pregnancy. Midwives and doctors helped distribute contraceptive methods in secret. Homemade remedies and traditional herbal methods were passed down among women. Abortion, though illegal and dangerous, was sometimes the only option for women who could not afford more children. Women also simply refused to have children by avoiding sex or using the little knowledge they had about natural birth control methods. This was their quiet way of saying no to Mussolini's demand for more babies. As Mussolini's control over Italy tightened, women played a key role in underground resistance groups. Many women worked in clandestine networks, helping to spread anti-fascist materials, delivering secret messages, and protecting people who were targeted by the regime. Some printed and distributed illegal newspapers that criticized Mussolini's government. Others helped hide political opponents, offering them shelter and food when they were being hunted by fascist authorities. Many women acted as couriers, secretly carrying messages between resistance groups while pretending to be ordinary housewives or workers. These underground activities were incredibly risky. If women were caught, they could be imprisoned, tortured, or even executed. But despite the dangers, thousands of women took part in the movement, determined to fight Mussolini's oppression. When Italy became an ally of Nazi Germany in World War II, the resistance movement grew even stronger. Women were no longer just supporting the resistance in secret. They were now actively fighting in battles. Many women became partisan fighters, joining armed groups that attacked Mussolini's soldiers and later fought against the Nazis after Mussolini was removed from power. They worked as spies, gathering intelligence on fascist and Nazi movements and passing it to the resistance. Others helped smuggle weapons and supplies to the fighters, sometimes right under the noses of fascist soldiers. One of the most famous women in the resistance was Carla Caponi. Born in 1918, she grew up in a time when women were expected to stay at home and obey their husbands. But instead of following Mussolini's rules, she joined the anti-fascist resistance in the early 1940s. Caponi became an active member of the Gruppi di Azione Patriottica, or GAP, a group that carried out attacks against Mussolini's troops and later against the Nazi occupation of Italy. She took part in armed operations, including attacks on fascist forces in Rome. For her bravery, she was later awarded Italy's Gold Medal of Military Valor, the highest honor for military courage. But Caponi was not alone. Thousands of women joined the partisan forces, fighting in the mountains and cities, helping to drive Mussolini and the Nazis out of Italy. These women were known as partigiani, or female partisans, and they played a crucial role in liberating the country. As Mussolini's government cracked down on political opponents and Jews, many women took great risks to help those in danger. In 1938, Mussolini introduced racial laws that targeted Jewish citizens, stripping them of their rights and making them targets for arrest and deportation. When Italy later became occupied by Nazi forces in 1943, Jewish families faced even greater danger. Women in the resistance played a major role in hiding Jewish families from deportation to concentration camps. Some women opened their homes to Jewish refugees, giving them shelter and helping them escape to safer areas. Catholic nuns and other religious women also participated in the rescue efforts, hiding Jews in churches, convents, and orphanages. Many women worked with underground networks to forge fake identity papers so that Jewish people could avoid detection. Without these brave women, thousands more Jews would have been sent to Nazi death camps. Resisting Mussolini's dictatorship came with a heavy price. Many women who joined the underground movement or the armed resistance were arrested, tortured, or executed. Lidia Beccaria Rolfi, a young schoolteacher, was caught helping the resistance and sent to Ravensbrück, a Nazi concentration camp for women. She survived and later wrote about her experiences. Similarly, Irma Bandiera, a partisan fighter, was captured by fascist forces in 1944. She was tortured for days, but refused to give up information about her comrades. She was executed, and her body was left on display as a warning to others. Gina Borellini, another female partisan, fought in battles and was seriously wounded. Even after losing a leg, she continued her resistance work. Despite these dangers, women kept fighting. They refused to be silent, even when facing death. Mussolini's rule ended in 1943 when he was removed from power. 2 years later, in 1945, he was captured and executed by Italian resistance fighters. After his death, Italy changed. The new government brought back many rights for women. And in 1946, Italian women finally gained the right to vote. In the following decades, divorce became legal again, and women slowly regained their place in the workforce. However, the damage done by Mussolini's policies lasted for years. Many women had lost opportunities for education and careers. The idea that women should stay at home and have children remained strong in Italian society long after Mussolini was gone. It took decades of activism and legal changes to undo the effects of his rule.